Yep, getting this going. All right, so what I usually do is I start off with a patch like this. I also have to remind myself to turn down that, and also let's apply just a general volume master so we don't clip a lot. So there's just like a general start of that as an idea that you can work with, right? As far as orchestral stuff. But as it stands, I'm out of Rockstar and I need to go to the fridge, so I'll be right back. I am actually out of Rockstar. This is going to be horrible. But at least I have a temporary alternative in place, so it's all good. So what I tend to do with Nexus 2 is a mini template, if you will, to develop orchestral ideas is finding patches like this, for example, that give you the tonal quality that you would expect to hear from, say, a fully assembled orchestra, even though this isn't east-west instruments, for example. What it can do for you is give you the general basic idea of what you would want to hear if you were to do orchestral stuff. Yes, actually. Bear with me a second. I'll actually pull something up I did for it, for you to hear if you are interested. I just need to swipe my data off the side of the screen because I was working on website development for a little bit, like my own stuff. Let's go into, let's see here, Reaper-based projects. I have shown this song a couple of times in past streams and whatnot, but it's at least good to share it. So I'm going to open it up. This way you get an understanding kind of like what I do, I guess. But at the same time, you know, it's only a fraction of what I do. I'm still kind of in the YouTube study of how certain electronic genres are made and whatnot, such as like dubstep, EDM, and whatnot, because apparently with how popular that really is, it's something that I want to at least better understand, and at least knowing how that stuff is done can lend itself to what I primarily do, more or less, which is metal. I mean, like, that just came more natural to me at a younger age, like 17 years ago when I graduated high school. Metal was more or less something that I knew I wanted to do. But then adding this stuff, for example, was a different process, and this started happening over the last several years. So I'll give you Mortal Perdition, which is a 7-minute long orchestral thing, but it's like symphonic metal, I guess, if you would call it that. For example, this would be what would be considered a guitar track. So that's like one instance of stuff that I do, for example. Let me grab another project here just real quick, because it'll also show the electronic side more. This one that I'm loading up, it was written in 2007, and then after acquiring some extra tech and whatnot, I made some upgrades to it, I guess, if you will. So I'll run this one real quick. Completely awkward time signature, but in a weird way it worked for what I was wanting to do at that time. That would be kind of a idea of electronic stuff that I do. And playing this one live is actually pretty fun, and because I don't have to worry too much about playing guitar until the weird time signature. It also kind of gives breathing space for any other musicians that play the show with me and whatnot. And if I remember correctly, the last time that this song was played live, and the bassist and the guitarist were able to just kind of like freely roam around the venue. And when those parts kick in, they're able to play those parts and not have to worry so much about whether or not if there's like a special click track or whatever. It's pretty easy to tell when the part comes up where it's like, okay, like this is about to happen. So just play like these simple 2 notes in a varied chugging pattern. So let's actually load up another one just for the hell of it. Some of the noisier but more groovy stuff, I guess. Got to remind myself to change the features on this so that when I'm loading a new project, it doesn't load in a new tab. But this one, there's only one guitar recorded for it right now in this version, and this is also written about 2007. And then it's just a noisy end right there and the rest of the way out. But yeah, like those are a few examples of things that I typically do for the most part. Whereas, for example, working with orchestral elements in nature, things like that are things that I want to keep incorporating because it just feels like something that I want to add as an extra dimension to whatever it is that I do. So let's see here. Okay, so there's something key-wise that I've been wanting to work with for a bit. Kind of like developing a part 2 of a song that I already just showed on stream, of all things. I don't know, like there's a variety of things that could be done with a progression like that. But I think what I'm going to start it out with, to be honest, would probably be more along the lines of doing it piano style. So let's see here. Let's start it out with and going for the dry layers of piano here. And then double check the velocity sensitivity on keyboard touch. Write that and then test it. So like having that as an intro would actually probably be good. So let's see here. Probably going to be 8th notes most likely, just like the original. So it's now step recording it, and then later on I'll adjust the velocities to kind of fit more of like where everything's supposed to, I guess, go. Let's see, I might actually need to double that out. So let's see here. Now programming in the keys. And some of that's off already, okay. still off. Dude. Maybe I should probably just try live recording it. See how that works, I guess. Let's see here. Figure out the speed click track wise. Actually, not bad for that. Let's see here. One 13 BPM, that's where I'll put it at. Why not? Yeah, it feels like the right speed. Just I need to be a little bit more cleaner with my performance. And I also should place a marker right here and mark it as the start. So if I'm rendering anything out, at least it knows the start from there. That's one of the fun things to learn about Reaper when it comes to that, because I can go all the way to the beginning, but then I can press 1, go right there. And then if I render anything from measure 4 onward out, it renders it starting from there. If I say the whole project, it's like a mini marker saying this is the start of the project, which is awesome. And then on top of that, who the hell is here? And bad news for my mom this morning, but maybe she might have a better turnout for the day. Okay, so let's try it one more time. That should sit just fine. And then quantize as 16th notes. Then it's playback and adjust all the notation as necessary. So that definitely works in favor. Next step is, for the sake of it, we use Nexus for some of our more generalized instruments. I might go with the classical, or I might go with the dance orchestra for instrument patches. I don't know what yet, but let's find out here. Strong on that one. A little too strong with that too, so let's just go down and let's see here. Strong still. Time to go with categories. And actually still works in favor. Mellow enough. Not really looking for humanization with it just now, but mellow enough to lend itself the way it should. Actually, now I have a crazy ass idea. Change this to a fucking harp. Velocity. Copy around. Then next stack will be another Nexus, so I have a brass patch to work with. It might even be one of these. Right, in terms of volume. Not too bad, actually. How's your day going? I am actually riding a second or a third wind of insomnia, potentially. And I figured doing some orchestral stuff would be in order for a little bit. Question is finding a decent enough brass patch to at least pull off an idea. Maybe dark horns. Strikes and gutters. Sounds like a bowling day. That's why that's got sounds like an octave to it. That's more dry. So let's see here. Actually, the one thing I want to do is find out what scales and or modes these keys are. Primarily because like I already know what the original key of this was. Normally it's like D and A sharp, but I'm using a transposition feature on my synthesizer, and I figure I transpose it down 4 semitones and use that as a means to kind of create a different feel and texture for the song. So let's see here, that would be that, and then C sharp harmonic minor. A C major. I could probably work with that. We'll find out, right? Actually, wait. Scale finder. Okay, so those notes apparently create some form of a major scale, and then a sharp harmonic minor. Okay, so finding the relative of that, I think. A sharp harmonic. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4. If I remember correctly, it's like C major is also a minor, so the sharps might actually do something. Let's see here. Yeah. So I could be like C major or C sharp major and then a sharp melodic minor. But doing this as 3-note chords to kind of lend itself as like a background texture of sort. It'll eventually, when I wind up using the orchestra library and arranging everything, all of the actual instruments that are meant to be there will be there. Luckily enough, Nexus is good at helping in painting a picture, and that's what I'm trying to do with this right now, luckily enough. So I believe it's 2 measures a piece. And then two measures of that. And then it's A sharp harmonic minor. So let's create a different chord to kind of give it a different feel. So we use these notes as our basis to figure out whether or not if we want to use that or if we want to change it around. And the ability to scrub makes things a hell of a lot better. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And that's an interesting enough interval. Kind of like an augmented or something. What I'm going to want to do actually is kind of create a little bit of movement for the root of that. And phone's fully charged. Awesome. So let's see, a root. First, let's see, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. First, second, third, fourth, fifth. Still the same. Dirt. I mean, it can feel like a tension builder, but don't exactly want to go there. So I could just probably add more velocity to it in order to give it some more kind of instrument definition, because multi-velocity layering is not a bad thing, but it's knowing where to kind of like sit yourself, I guess. Probably 32 is the best. So without a click track, let's see how this works. Close it up an octave. Sounds more natural now. Let's see how it works. Okay, so for the most part, I feel like it works. Just still need to get the right key for this. Probably could work. Oop. Now it's just really kind of leveling it out. Now that I think about it, an arrangement method that might work. experiments are always fun. Now it's starting to make me think that it's meant more for like maybe an end part or something. So I don't know. I'll set it off to the side here, but what I'll do is layer it up like so. Try it like this, and if this works arrangement wise, I would probably actually keep this as a like an outro part. That one, just find where it kind of would be a good spot to stop it and just let it fade out. Stop it like so, I think. See how long it drones out. Yeah, East West Harp has something to it that just, it gives off like that really kind of like either like the chilled across your skin kind of a vibe, or it's kind of an ominous thing, I guess. And yes, how are you enjoying the update to Play 6? Ohm Force is kind of beastie, isn't it? Like, it's kind of an unorthodox approach that you can use towards anything that you have. Speaking of unorthodox, rotating the microphone just a little bit. Actually, the one thing I want to do with this, I know it's probably going to just keep eating up more system RAM and whatnot by doing this, but let's go with the wet layer. I'm going to use the Bosendorfer wet layer piano for an outro, I think, just to like give it like a creepier vibe, or like more sad. I think it would actually be a good thing. I know, right? It is indeed a very elaborate setup, and if you take some of the time to kind of learn, like what's all provided. Like the one thing that I didn't realize, for example, about symphonic orchestra is that there are MIDI CC controls that you can use to automate the dynamics in a way, not the articulations or anything, but the dynamics of which the instrument that you're attempting to control, it kind of gives it kind of like, it's almost like using like, I think it's MIDI CC7 for volume, for example. But if you use MIDI CC11, if I recall this correctly, it allows you to essentially operate the instrument as a volume control, but it's more or less dynamics control in some regard. Whereas if you use mod wheel for, it's kind of hard to explain it, I guess, in a way, but there are some patches that have mod wheel dynamic enabled. So if you have your mod wheel at 0 completely, after you kind of like, for example, take that, like this is my mod wheel going forward, backward. It doesn't exactly sound like anything, but when you apply that to one of the instruments under the mod DFX or whatever it is, using that allows you to control the actual performance dynamics, so you can create a crescendo, or at least imitate one, where a string player might be playing it really soft and then they like go really hard as far as the sound is concerned. And you can kind of at the same time do that with MIDI CC11, in terms of if there's an instrument that's like a hard playing one, you can kind of bring it down volume wise in a way. But it's best if you can do that while in doing that and going into the next note or series of notes, if they are at a lower velocity, to kind of add as much realism as you can, because it's really difficult to get it to sound good. But if you're using the Hollywood series, from what I know, you're able to modulate a lot of that between MIDI CC1 mod wheel and MIDI CC11, which is more or less kind of like volume mixing, but not really. And you can create a lot of like the push and pull that a natural orchestra would give you. And that's something that I want to get into at some point. But in order for me to do that, I need to upgrade the drive that I have everything on right now to a 2 terabyte. Because right now it's a 1, and I actually had to delete all of the Hollywood stuff in order to have all of this extra stuff, so I have more tools handy on top of everything else I have. Are you currently on a monthly plan with Composer Cloud? If you are, I know that if you got the $50 a month, the CC Plus, I believe it is, you can get the Hollywood series, though if you're going to use all of it plus the choir, you're going to need about 720 gigabytes of hard drive space. That is crazy. No, okay. You've purchased instruments outright, I'm assuming, rather than decided to go on a monthly plan. Speaking of monthly plan, okay, 7 years ago. I would definitely recommend, if you have the ability to do it and if you can afford it, and do the $50 a month plan. You'll get an update of everything that they have available on a 2 terabyte external. And I am not even kidding you when I say this. It's really worth it, especially if you're wanting to do a lot more, especially with symphonic stuff. The Hollywood series is really, really intricate, really dynamic. And the problem is 720 gigabytes to have Hollywood strings, Hollywood brass, Hollywood percussion, Hollywood woodwinds. You also have a Hollywood harp for it, and then adding the Hollywood choirs on top of that, 720 gigabytes. Jesus Christ. But it's really worth it. I can guarantee you that. A little bit of that investment does go a long way. It's one thing I learned from working with another, I would say, musician, but we're not really on talking terms, and there's multiple good reasons why we don't. But when we were working on music, it was a lot of like electronic, symphonic, and deathcore type stuff. And at that time, we were quite literally just seething with all of this crazy idea. And so we were like listening to a lot of Winds of Plague, The Browning, and for a short period of time, when I got the ability to do so, I would be listening to some Strapping Young Lad and Devin Townsend and whatnot, utilizing a variety of things that were incorporated through all the years and all the albums, every song possible, just like soaking it in. What can we, be innovative with our own work based on what we hear with what these people are doing? And we came up with something that was so crazy that I started realizing the only way I'm going to be able to get to that point in guaranteeing this is by making extra investments. And a majority of stuff that I was handed over the years that was like hack and crack, like everything in my computer now is 100% legit after finally having the ability to do it. Every penny spent into everything is totally worth it. In a couple of days, I get to finally resume my Steven Slate monthly, which is like $15 a month for every mixing and mastering based kind of thing that you could possibly think of. I haven't really used it much, so I kind of told myself, save the $15 this month. It definitely saved me. But next month, I can actually start affording it again. And every plugin in it is totally worth it. All the emulations are about as spot on as the real hardware. Amazing. Yeah, aside from that, real quick, do this piano thing. Maybe 2, it just depends. Okay, so that octave would make that much more killer. Problem is, that in order to achieve that, I can't use this piano patch because those sharp notes or the initial transient from striking those strings on a piano, that's too much, and I don't want to filter that out. I want to try to keep it as close to natural as possible, but at the same time, it's got to be synthetic for now. When the time comes along and I can come back to it, I'll definitely have to filter out a lot of that and keep the body of it, and it should be flawless. Let's see here. The next step is figuring out which one would be perfect for the job. Probably another Nexus patch, go figure. When all else fails, always go Nexus. Let's see what this one does. Also forgot to mention, always turn it down at least 12 decibels on your mixer whenever you instate a Nexus plugin, because that output, it's like, damn. Not exactly synthesized, that's more arpeggiated. What is in the layers? That's what it should sound like. However, a little bit of that. Let's see about doing some cutoff work. Cutoff work ain't gonna do it, so let's try and resort to going back to that instrument in the play, and then we'll work on the filtering part. Screw it. Next step is turn on gonna want to have the reverb in there naturally. The next step is figuring out what exactly to filter out as far as all of this is concerned. Probably there. Let's find out. Okay, yeah. Next step is get a metronome, because a metronome is your best friend. And like usual, always go in, add a second layer of control so we know exactly what we're dealing with here. go in and fix every inconsistent note, which is pretty easy to do for the most part. Because if it doesn't line up on that grid, then it just needs a small adjustment. Kind of like right there, that's supposed to be a 16th note trill. And then play it back after adjusting sustain. What we should do here actually is manually draw in those so that we know where they're at, but also because that's where it's at, cut out the excess on the side. See how this plays. All right, so then next step is cut it there, and then trim that back, and then play it and see if it works in context. Because this isn't Nexus now, increase the volume just a little bit. Might want to extend those just a little bit here. And just that far, and then kind of give it more or less the quarter note beat type thing. Or maybe be a little bit more realistic with it. Go into 32nd note mode and now it feels a little bit more closer to like human realism to an extent. Yeah, not even a problem, man. I'm like I'll always say at some point is I'm always down to help out people that are not only, starting out with wanting to get involved in music, but if there's something that maybe I have that others have and they're kind of confused about it and I might know something about it, I'm always down to part that information onto others so that they can improve their usage out of what they have. And though I can definitely say I'm not like a complete expert on everything, because music is The same with mixing and mastering is the same with using instruments in composition. It's all kind of a black art. Knowing a synthesizer from the inside out is one thing, analog versus digital. Sample libraries versus real people playing instruments, for example, that's yet again another thing. But the one thing that I do know is the information I've gathered over the last almost 20 years now is information that I know others can benefit from, whatever it may be. If it's not relevant to what they would do themselves, there's at least something that I can part information with to others that maybe they get something out of it in a way that if it wasn't direct enough, maybe it's abstract enough to make them think outside the box. Like maybe something from that can change the outcome of what I'm trying to do right now, for example. Let's see here. As I listen back to this, I want to see what it sounds like going in and figure out a way to kind of get into it. Okay, so C sharp major, 1, 2, 3, C sharp major. So let's see here. I went 4 notes down. Okay, so if I figured out something that worked around my keyboard's transposition of being an E, I might be able to come up with something that I can let sustain into like a small section here, which would also mean, let's see here. So that has to be the last chord because it's going to create the tension that brings it back into this. This is going to be ridiculous. Nope, wrong notes. My bad. See here with that. Seems like this is going to be like a harmonic minor again, so let's see here. And building my way upwards to that, well, let's see here. I'm assuming that D is A sharp. Okay, so building up to that A sharp, but with weird transposition features on a keyboard. Yeah, other workflows are definitely interesting because some people may have like a very strict workflow, and then some people are just really all over the board, and that's kind of where I fall in categorically. And watching other people do as they do is definitely interesting. Like usually when I do music like this, it's always very off the hinge where I don't know where I'm going with it. But when I start hearing something that I like and I start going with it, then I kind of start to get more structured. Whereas if I'm doing stuff like metal, for example, usually I start with drums first because I don't want to hear the general click, track, and Reaper, in which, as much as it would be helpful, but I can't exactly be perfect with my subdivisions with a 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like I got to be able to hear like 16th notes or 32nd notes or whatever, so I can be as, I guess, note accurate on guitar, and I don't have to be as accurate with bass at that point. I can just like half note it. So if I was doing 32nd notes on guitar, I could do 16th on bass and it should be just fine. Or I can do 8th and let it breathe more. Let's see here. Then last note, that E. And then let's get these two items married, and because that's how we want to look at it. Scale finder. So C sharp harmonic minor, and then clear that. Goes into a C major. Okay. So C sharp harmonic minor, we can add an extra note on top to make it kind of chordal in nature. Chordal. Felt like I just said choral. That's what happens when you're like, So see your C sharp harmonic minor. Now it's just structuring all the voicings. Now it's just listening back to it and seeing how it flows, right? Needs more attention. So we're just going to be very, very screwy with this. So see here, when we get to see here, if that, okay, yeah, so that's a C. Maybe it needs to actually be more in this key. Somewhere in here we're gonna get it. And from there, let's actually be smart about this and figure out what the, let's see here. Maybe that might work. I don't know. I consider that to possibly work, but now it's applying it by listening back. And measure back. Let it do its thing for drowning out. Damn. All I need to do is just remove, I believe, those notes in particular, or yeah, because they're about, actually, if I move it up an octave and make sure to change all of these extra notes around. That try it without that extra bass note in there. Gotta get that root in there. So let's see here. It's an F sharp, but that's an F sharp too. I might actually have to change the scale on that to match, because that does not seem to probably be in the scale. If I remember correctly, this was A sharp harmonic minor. Does the note actually work? Oh, it does. Let's see here. However, probably need to, let's see here. Actually, because that root note changes things around. Let's see here. B and let's see here. So it's B. E major. All right, so let's go with E major for that part. See if it actually can have some sort of flow. And this is like using music theory on a level of like, what the hell? Figuring out how that progress is happening right now. It's just like, what? Let's see here. Scale finger. Find myself a means of making a shortcut for that so I can actually tap it out when I need it. Let's see here. Take off the key snap. C sharp major, maybe? Or what about F natural minor? Let's see what an F natural minor can do. it on the major side for that, and C sharp. It's probably going to be the same notes anyways. Maybe that was what it needed. And then do that, and then keep the end piano part there in the, I believe it's the, what is it? A sharp harmonic minor, and I believe a C major, like a C sharp major or something like that. How do you do there? How are you doing? Play this back and get a feel for it over and over, I guess. Kind of a weird transition. I'm not used to listening to a bunch of happy stuff in weird ways. Buffering a lot. That's a bit of shame there. I mean, I understand, some people happen to have slower internet connections than usual. I mean, I was there myself a lot when I first moved into this apartment. Wasn't entirely too thrilled with having to wait to get faster internet, but it happened. But then again, I mean, it kind of happens from time to time. You wind up getting high traffic on your network, and they usually tend to eat up more of the bandwidth if it's like cable modem and whatnot, and you're at peak hours. Question is does this work right? Probably change that note. Then apply a listen to it to see how it flows. Listen to it at the end part. So that end part, it's definitely going to be a weird one, but I know somebody that would be more than capable of helping to kind of flesh out the intricacies of note selection there to kind of make things flow in a way where it feels like you know, like the dark aspect of like minor scale type stuff. Where it's like sad, and then the last two like those last two measures of that phrasing right there, it feels kind of like it resolves appropriately, but then it kind of dips back down towards it's not exactly finished, or at least that's how it kind of feels. But and there's a method to that madness, and it'll get figured out. For this, I don't know. Wonder if a piano part might actually kind of like help it out. I have to remember that I don't exactly know what these notes are in particular. If I transpose my synthesizer back to normal, I might be able to crank out something. I don't know. As far as like the like to give a good concept of like what this is right here, originally these phrases right here were based on something that was written with, I believe it was a D minor, and then it went to an A sharp melodic minor or something like that. Actually, because I just transposed the keyboard, let's find out. Actually, I don't. Wait. Not only that, but that. Let's see here. So D harmonic minor, apparently based on the notes played for that, but then so that's D minor triad, even though I consider it minor because any other note that I would put in it would fit in terms of the minor scale. But you only really need, you know, those notes. And then changing that key would make it D harmonic minor, I guess. I like minor scales a lot. It's kind of weird. So like listening to like this part of the phrase, for example, and being in like a major, I think that's like, what was that? I think that was like A sharp melodic minor or something like that. Or like harmonic or something. Either way it goes, realistically, like I decided right at the tail end there, just like change those notes to kind of progress back down, but then kind of resolve back in like some sort of predictability. And the same with this, but the bottom hat, like the root area, as I play it back. I decided to do that to kind of bounce it around, give it a little bit more movement, so it's not like a stagnant whole note. Whereas the upper part kind of plays along a little bit with these notes earlier in the phrase and then drops back down into that, which in its entirety. It's kind of like a really weird, I guess, transition or form of note progression. but I also kind of dig that vibe of an idea, because doing that creates a form of uncertainty of where things are going to go. And I tend to do that a lot. Speaking of, let's see here. I need to drag that off the screen for a second. We're going to make a follow-up to that one. Going to create a subdirectory for it. Audio, which there really isn't any, would be moved in there. Real quick, let's load up the original that I'm basing this one on. And the way I see it is more or less like what I'm about to load up is like part one, I guess, if you will, because I decided somehow magically maybe I might do something very specific. Wait, oh no, this is Delicious Red. No, we don't want to load that one right now. Bad. Where is it? Winter 2016 copy and version 4. Reaper has officially blown my mind that it's loading multiple instances. I want to open it up over here in this window. So open it in a new tab. And what I'm going to do here for you is play you what the original is, which if I can make a if I can find an appropriate instrument of this. Let's see here. One of these somewhere. Maybe this. Oh no. Even though I don't really want to record MIDI. And it don't work. All right, cool. Maybe this. Something is not happening here. That's totally odd. Okay, what about... No? Okay, where is the MIDI routing into that from? Either way it goes, let's see here. Find the harp, I guess. If I can find it, and cross fingers it wants to do something. All right, there we go. Okay, so the original scale starts off, or at least go an octave higher so it makes more sense. So that's kind of like D minor and then D harmonic minor. And then the feature that I use on my keyboard, transposition, goes down 4. So instead of playing it, instead of playing the key bed in C, I'm now playing it in G sharp for my C notes. So if I played a B, it's a G, I believe. Yeah, because that would be like the initial starting melody that you would hear for like the first stage of Star Fox. And then the other notes in the arpeggio. So it's G sharp, and then playing it, see here, G sharp. So I believe it makes it A sharp when doing it. So using transposition capabilities on a keyboard like this can help drastically in the workflow when you're using MIDI instruments in any software that you use, be it Pro Tools, Logic, Reaper, Cubase, and whatnot. I know that there are some plugins that may be provided in some of them that allow you to transpose that data on the way in, or allow you to transpose it in the recording step. So if you were to play it naturally the way that you think you would play it on a keyboard in a standard transposition, when the data hits the computer before it's even recorded, it would change all of that to whatever you transposed it to, and you'd be able to hear it live on the fly. Whereas being able to do it on board with this synthesizer really helps out the process. But like I was about to do a second ago, that was in D minor and D sharp or D harmonic minor, whichever way it goes. But that was this one. And then applying that concept over here, like making this like a part two. Even though there's kind of a weird difference with the harp versus the pizzicato strings in this one. And the reason why is because having to adjust it to accommodate for the note selection used primarily with what I'm trying to use as a brass pad, where when I translate this data, it's going to go into a symphonic library, and I want to make sure that all of it sounds like, in a way, real brass players are actually playing it. But in order to get that kind of a feel, I want to have it very soft and very mellow so that it doesn't overpower the rest of what's going on. And the same thing would happen with the violin as well. There would be a little more vibrato to it, but it would also be a very soft kind of a performance. So it would be kind of hard naturally, I think, for some players to get that. But there are people that are very proficient with being able to do that. So it's just yeah, hard to explain, I guess. But I'm going to play this back one more time, and I'll go and play the other version so you can kind of get an idea of, I guess, what this project is going to be. To me, this is like a segue into repeating the phrase for the end here. And just for the shits of it, I'm going to take those notes out and test it. That feels like it would be a little bit more appropriate for an end. But there's that, and then there is this monstrosity of 7 minutes long. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So then, as you hear, kind of like the more resolute concept over there versus this, where it feels a little bit more like a triumphant thing in a way, but it's very aggressive. So that's what I consider now a first part for what's going to follow up and create this. Even though the speed is 20 BPM slower approximately, I feel like being able to have something like that there would be a perfect method for kind of starting out with something and then kind of finishing it off in a different place than where it's at. For a quick minute, I need to take a quick break, but I will be right back real quick. Like, not even maybe 2 minutes tops. I don't know. All right, and I am back. I had to get up and take a couple of steps around the space and use the restroom because that's what breaks are for. And as well, checking on somebody because I guess they came down with a cold. And they may not be showing up today, which if they do or do not, it's up to them. Aside from me doing that now, so maybe I might as well go somewhere and stay home at the same time because you can be in two places at once. How stupid does that sound? So for something like this right here, I don't know. I wonder what it would be like to find a note in that general vicinity of that, but write something on the violin that would sound decent as like a low sustain of some sort. Like a droning note, maybe. I don't know. Maybe even a high, who knows? This obviously won't sound great. And 2 notes is too much. A full octave is too much. Now, that actually might work. Who knows? Give it a shot. No, I want to open up the violin and then secret and ghost the other. Okay, a little bit more pleasant as far as building tension there, I guess. On the trend of building on this, I think the next step is probably going to be the drum kit. And with this, I have to also remind myself that it's slow and it's meant to be slow. So also to make it soft. Set the record function to be only the drum track. Asshole. Oh yeah, that's right. I'm not on my 88 key like I was with one of the last couple of streams. I want to do it too long or not. Let's see. Actually, that paces it kind of nice. Okay, I'll work with it. However, I'm going to shorten the notes. Look like. Because eventually, when you wind up and doing all your drum work, you eventually just like you build a skeletal idea, and then you go in later and edit all of the stuff around like magic. So let's see here. That should be soft enough, I would assume. And then probably for an end, maybe another that, or maybe just that. And an idea just for the hell of it. Go with 16th notes. Suited for like 30-second notes, I think. Yeah, a little bit more like that. Kind of a soft roll, even though it may sound a little fast. Something about that just feels like gold already. But I know for a fact what I'm going to do here is set that so that it's that exact BPM and that exact time signature. And then let that kind of and do its own fade thing or whatever. That way then at least I have it there. And let's see here. Let's close that out because I don't want to have all that extra RAM used up or whatever. Don't crash on me. Sweet. Okay, let's see here. With that stuff in place, maybe I can come up with like a different scheme that doesn't fit in with what the first song itself had and what this has already got. And if I do it in such a way, I can also use tempo mapping in order to kind of push and pull things around. If so, let's see here. Let's put in a marker there anyways and see if this... And as always, for anything I do, and then different groove, something I don't normally do as far as drums are concerned. Let's see here. Okay, that feels like it could start it out. Next step is an instance of contact. Don't want to really multi-out it myself right now. And then we're going to go with an instance of shreddage. And because that's going to be the guitar library of choice for now at least. And we're going to go into the byte. We're going to make it somewhere between 9 and 10 o'clock. It isn't exactly something significant, but it's kind of like whatever. Actually, I can add a second instance and route it to the same MIDI channel. Set it for, technically it's going to act like quad tracking, but really it's just double tracking. And then again, somewhere kind of between 9 and 10. We're going to output the pan left and right. We're going to view the drum track as much as it's not visible enough. The opacity of it needs to be changed up enough so that you actually can see what's going on. And bring the overall track volume down, because now we're going to add guitar rig to the mix. And that's how we're going to get our, and that's how we are going to get our dry library track to sound close enough to like a real guitar. My apologies for this being repetitive and annoying. Now we go into doing this, a little figuring out exactly what to do. not know, because there's such a weird groove to that. I don't know if doing a triplet would work. Probably be like too complicated. God. Let's see here. I'm gonna do something like this as far as like a groove or something. Let's see here. I'm definitely gonna want to put it further down, and I'm gonna want something kind of weird to accent it noise-wise, perhaps. So let's get a little bit deep here for a second by rolling with Atmosphere, and we're going to use only one patch on it, but we're also going to add an instance of Homicide. This in itself is going to be noisy. I got a crash. I bet it. What do you know? 1 second while I adjust that. Because I know for a fact it's going to full crash me. See where we're at with it too. Okay. So what happened here is I lost all that data at the beginning. So best thing I can do is change that to 153 like I had it last time. And then we have the 113 over here at the end. I think what I'm going to do currently, because also social media is blowing up on me like crazy, usually does at this hour. I'm going to call it here for now, and I'll wind up streaming a little bit later. I'm not sure when exactly, but I do know now that I have things kind of sorted out with a few things that I'm going to be doing this a little bit more, and I'll continue on this a little bit later on. And if I do a little bit more work on it off stream, at least I'll be sharing that one way or another, because I believe that this project alone should be something done live on stream. But sometimes you probably kind of get the itch that you want to work on something, but you don't think initially about, putting it like live on the fly. So with that, thank you for checking this out. And if you enjoy seeing stuff like this, let me know, and I'll keep doing it as best as I can, as well as I will do as much more of this as I can with streaming in the future and whatnot. The sound of a second or third wind dying. But definitely a pleasure to help anybody out that has come along and asked questions. If you happen to have any questions, always, even in future streams, feel free to ask me. I will answer the best I can. Until then, whatever time zone you're in, have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and whichever is applicable to you. I will see you again here soon.